Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Hunter Base podcast. What do Maverick Hunters do when they're not hunting Mavericks? They go back to the base, recharge, and shoot the shit. I'm your host with the most, Zeromaster, and back again with me is my regular co-host, Mr. Up here.
Ayo.
Okay, now you might be a little too loud. I'm going to turn you down.
Oh God.
There we go. That's better. Okay. So it's been, like you said, it's been a month. How are you? What's new and exciting?
Things and stuff, you know, it can't ever stop moving, because if you stop moving, that's when you get old and you die.
Yeah, don't stop believing. Hold on to that feeling.
Hold on to a feeling, and that feeling is love.
Feeling? Okay.
What we're holding on to is our I'm gonna say our voluptuous breasts. I was gonna go a different direction with that, but I don't know what to go with. So we're just gripping those babies and running forward. So in this case, what we're doing is we are trying to get through working a lot. That's mainly what I do these days.
Yeah. Oh man, the last week of work has been like, I was so dead at the end of the week. And then I had to move stuff around this weekend because we're getting ready to have new tenants. So,
oh boy,
roommate had to move from the basement back upstairs, and we're partially done that. We got rid of the stupid fucking couch we had that was huge. And
oh damn, not the stupid fucking couch.
Yeah, it was
not to be confused with the intelligent fucking couch.
You're funny, but this thing, it was just made for condos, and it wasn't made for like our house, so we got rid of it, and we've got way more room now, and my TV's finally being properly utilized.
Hey-o.
And we're utilizing our living room again, which is good. So things have been good, but it's been busy, and I definitely feel some of it in me bones.
It's a whole thing.
The week at work, at my job where I do IT, we're replacing computers, but at the same time, I'm being thrown tons of high priority stuff that needs to get done yesterday. So it's been stressful.
Yep, love that for you. I'm so sorry. I will state something that you would not be ashamed of. So, as you know, I have a brother. Shout out to Seraph. Yeah, that's the thing. My brother that I'm referring to is my younger brother. And he has been like, hey man, I need you to play this game with me. And I have played it with him, and I'm not kidding. One time for 2 hours, and then that was it. And that was like 2 years ago. That's the only time I had ever played it in my entire life. I've since fallen headfirst into this game, and I'm both ashamed of myself. You want to guess? Just want to guess what game I would be ashamed of.
Would be ashamed of?
I am ashamed.
What would you be ashamed of?
Infinite sadness. No, I have been playing Fortnite.
Oh, that game. I'm sorry.
And within 2 days, I'd beaten the whole battle pass.
Jesus. Look.
So
okay,
I was like, I've been playing a lot. Jesus.
Look, I don't like Fortnite. I've tried. I had an opportunity to do a sponsorship, so it's like, I'll try the game, and then I immediately died like within like.
Wait, so you get a sponsorship for Fortnite?
Minutes?
That's amazing. Because think about how many people play that game. And so here's the thing: the only reason I play it is, as we know, I am a basic white bitch in the sense that I played Call of Duty games, right? Like I didn't play them religiously, but I played them.
What?
With friends.
You played Call of Duty? I never would have seen that.
Oh God, gargle my own vomit. So the thing is that I would play these games because it was a game that I could consistently get the guys to play. Right? It's a game. Turn your brain off, play it, yell at each other, act like it's 2007, call it a day. The problem is that the new Call of Duty has, in my opinion, basically shot that game in the kneecaps and pushed it down a cliff, and it is no longer operable on anything that I own, nor do I have any need to want to give that group of people an extra $70 to get what is essentially an overglorified DLC. So I was like, well, what other games do people play? Well, of course, here comes my brother popping out of the woodwork like a parasite, and he's like, yo, you should totally play Fortnite. And I'm like, you know what? Fine. Just to get you to shut up, I'll play it. And now it and Dragon's Dogma, the original, are like the only two games I've been playing. So...
I mean, yeah, like the anniversary for Honkai Star Rail has come up, so I've been playing a lot of that. And
yeah, I did see that. They introduced that new character, Boot Hill.
Yeah. So I've been playing a lot of that, trying to get some many gems as I can for the next role. But yeah, just playing that on and off. I usually just play a bit of it on my lunchtime and do my dailies, and then I play when I stream it.
You-
I did do some of the story this past weekend, and I'm getting close to the end of the second storyline. So,
Do you do the mobile version or do you do the console version?
I do the PC version and the mobile version.
Okay, yeah, because I not sponsored by any means. I started playing AFK Journey just because it was there, and
I
they
keep
give you
seeing
so
that
much
game.
free crap.
I keep seeing that game, and I think I was offered a sponsorship, but I was like, I don't have time for this right now.
It's
So,
genuinely not okay. Genuine opinion of this from a guy who's a sucker to start mobile games and then falls out of them, because there are some that I've absolutely fallen into the pit trap of, and I'm more ashamed of those than Fortnite. AFK Journey is not bad. It's different than AFK Arena. You 90% of the time, and this is kind of what I was hoping for, you get more from not playing it than you do from playing it, if that makes sense. Like the amount of gold and resources that your characters get when you are AFK legitimately
I mean, it's called AFK, yeah.
So you do get something for those moments where you're not even playing it,
Gotcha.
which is an interesting thing to go over. So it's like, but there is a story, there is a customizable main character. It's
okay.
It's there.
So what you're saying is I should take the sponsorship.
It's not bad. Is it the greatest game I've ever played? No. But if you're looking for something to turn your brain off and kind of just put together, like it's like a book that you've been reading over the course of a year. You know, you can read a couple pages, wait a month, read another couple pages. It's not a bad game. It requires literally no money to be spent, which I appreciate. Most of the things that you can buy are just advancements for characters if you wanted to. And then there are some skins. Now, Zero, I need you to listen to me. I need you to look at me with those eyes and perk those cat ears up, and I need you to focus up with me right now. We're going to talk about the Dommy Mommy in the room, and that is in AFK Journey. They knew what they were doing because they put a character in that's being very heavily advertised, and she is the redheaded witch, and the redheaded witch is voluptuous in all the right ways for some weird reason. And her alternate outfit is modeled after a wedding gown, which is its own thing. So if you play the game and you want to spend like 25 in real life US dollars, you too can own that skin.
$25? Oh man. Oh.
Yeah, see, that's the thing about these mobile games that kill me, is that the skins, because they know that people want them, are so expensive. And here's the thing, genuinely. If you want to charge me $75 to skip through like chapters I've played before, or, you know, random level up bullshit, okay, fine, right? Because I don't have to do that, that's fine. The skins, I feel like, and this is, I know why they do it. From a business standpoint, it makes sense. I hate that skins are so expensive. Like if they were like, hey, $5, you can get this character in white, I'd be like, fuck yeah, you know, it's $5. What do I care? $25 is like a whole ass meal. And I don't know if I'm getting enough value from a game I play like every third Wednesday
is she
of the
a whole
month.
ass meal though?
No. Well, yes, but like, but again, it's not like I'm playing a game. Like if you were playing, let's take a game, one of my favorites, like a Tales of game, right? If you buy skins and stuff, you're in that character. You're playing that character so often with those skins that it feels worth it because you're getting something. In AFK Journey, I get to see that character only when I'm doing something in game that involves fighting. And by the way, there's energy levels, so you can run out of that. So like I'm maybe seeing it for 2 minutes a day for $25. Like I'd have to play the game for 6 years to make that worth it to me.
Okay. Well, see, and when you mentioned earlier that it doesn't really incentivize you to spend money unless you want to on cosmetic things. Honkai Star Rail is kind of the same way. Like I have spent no money on it, and I have some rare 5-star characters in it. So it's like, and when I saw like where you can spend money, which honestly, to find it, it's buried under stuff. Like you have to go into like the warp menu, and you have to go into.
They're really trying not to make the mistakes that a lot of other ones did. Like let's take the world of Genshin, right? Genshin Impact was like
same developer, Hoyoverse.
Yes, the be all end all of gacha games, and they are gacha games because essentially they took loot box to the next level. And here's the thing: when Genshin came out, all the reviews practically said the same thing. You know, for like people who love husbandos and waifus and stuff, great. But it was essentially a cleverly disguised gacha game with a storyline that took you in between random chances. That was the whole purpose. Like, hey, sink money into this, and there's a story keeping you going.
And honestly, like that's what I love about Honkai. The story is just so good. Like I said, I'm in the Xianzhou Lao Fu. I can't pronounce it. I've just been calling it Space China because that's basically what it is.
Yes, Space
Um,
China.
I'm near the end of that arc of that storyline, and each storyline chapter they only have 3 so far, 3 different planets or whatever. But each one's like a 40-hour RPG. Like it's like a full RPG essentially. And so you're getting your time's worth out of it by playing the game. So, and I actually recently did the stats for the end of the game to see how much, or for the full years of the game. I came in September. The game started in April. Went public in April, I should say, last year. So I have like only like 8-ish months worth, I guess. I don't know. But anyways, the amount of stuff that I had gotten just kind of astounded me. I'm like, I got this much in-game credits. I got this many characters. And I'm just like, I've only been playing this game for 8 months. And on top of that, I haven't spent a dime on it. So for me to get this much out of it, that's pretty good for a game that's for a free mobile game. You know what I mean? So,
Oh, absolutely.
and I'm still like, apparently, like, so Kurama, my partner Kurama is, she's way further in it than I am. She is like, the next storyline is like the best. You are going to want to get to it. So I'm trying my best to get through. Not that I dislike the one that I'm in, but I'm trying my best to get through it to finish it up so I can get caught up. Because there's also a lot of stuff that's locked if you haven't finished certain parts of the story. So there's a whole bunch of like side stuff that I can't do until I finish the storyline that I'm in. So I'm trying to get through it to not only get to the next storyline, but to be able to do some of the extra content so that I could get more gems. But yeah, I guess we're both still falling into mobile games. It sounds
Yeah, and
like
it's
what it
not
is.
it's not like bad. Like I'm not. I
Yeah.
don't. I say this. I'm not judging. I don't think it's bad. I think that there is a risk to play certain games that are more predatory. For instance,
Mhm.
I played one that was not a good game. I'm going to be honest with you, but it was
Yeah.
a very quick game, and it was a game that had a community for about 2 seconds that was not toxic, and it was really funny how people like seriously people took it. You've seen the advertisements for this. If you've owned a phone in the last 2 years, you've seen it because they blatantly, like the trailers blatantly rip off other games. And this is the one, oh God, what is it? It's like a war game. And like it had do you remember when the game that was supposedly supposed to be like a utopian BioShock, like but
Dude, I
in
have no
Russia?
idea. I have no idea.
It had the silver ballerina women in it. They're like
I've
robot
I don't know
ballerinas
what
that
you're
like were
talking about.
super. Oh man, I
That's
feel like
not the wait. That's not that rushing game that came out like within the
yeah,
last
within
year,
the
is
last
it?
2 years. Yeah, yeah, the one that
I
had
actually
like
kind of
the
wanted to
ammo
try it.
box, the ammo Atomic Heart. That's what it was called.
Atomic
It's
Heart.
got
Yeah,
the late. Yeah, it's got Atomic Heart. So it's heavily influenced by a bunch of stuff. But Atomic Heart has these women in it that are basically robot women, and they're way more attractive than they were ever should be. And they were heavily
yeah.
marketed in the trailer. But then again, they only appear in the game for like 2 minutes. So with that,
Mm-hmm.
this mobile game I was playing would literally take those characters and make them part of it. And the
Mm-hmm.
videos for the trailers have nothing to do with the game. So it would be
Mm-hmm.
like random robot woman chained by her hands and she's hanging in a closet thing. You have to come up and
Mm-hmm.
rescue her. And then all of a sudden she has a gun. And then like the gun is like her shooting people with the sniper. But then you get in the game, it's just like, here's a big map. Drag some tanks from one part of the map to another. That's the whole
Yeah.
game.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
And it's funny that we're talking about this because like I was just thinking about what mobile games I've played. The ones that I've played, and I mean actually played, not like I played it for like a week and I stopped playing it. Pokemon Go is probably the one that I have the most time in, although Honkai Star Rail may have trumped that now. But I played Pokemon Go for a couple of years, so we'll have to give it time. And then the Castlevania mobile game, and then Mega Man Cross or X Dive, which are both platformers that happen to have some gotcha elements. But again, it's not. It's for characters. It's for skins. It's for stuff. You don't need to do all that. The Castlevania was really hard though. If you did spend money for better gear, but it's Castlevania, so it should be hard, right? So that's the way I looked at it. But that game is no longer available. and the Mega Man X Dive game. The mobile version, or the version with all the mobile stuff, it's offline as well. But before they put it offline, they made an offline version of the game on Steam, where it's $30 and it has most of the in-game content except for certain crossovers that they couldn't get the rights to. So they made a version of the game that you don't need to spend any money on. You spend the $30 to get it, but there's no in-game purchases. All the content's available for you to unlock. You just unlock it instead of like paying, or instead of getting a certain amount of in-game currency or whatever. You just unlock it as you play through the game. And this brings us to like our topics tonight. So the first one that was in our little document list there is, as of April 8th, the 3DS and Wii U online servers have been shut down. So this is not the eShop. The eShop was last year. This is the online server. So for the last couple months, I've been streaming a lot of games on Wednesday nights that were on the Wii U that still had online with my friends, including Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate. And I did my last hunt just a week before they shut it down in Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate. But I finished G rank, which is what I wanted to do, which was all I had left. And the nice thing about that game is, with Monster Hunter games, all the content that's offline or online is also available offline. You can play it locally with people multiplayer if they have their 3DS or whatever. So it was just the last time I could play this game with my friends online. If we want to play it again, we'd have to do it in person or use other means, which is funny because like a day after the 3DS and Wii U online servers got shut down, a fan-made service called Pretendo was set up. And you don't even need to mod your console to use it. Like, they recommend making a new Nintendo ID because you could get if your other one's linked to your Switch, it could get banned. Yeah, and my Nintendo ID is connected to my Switch, so if I ever do use this service, I'll have to make a new account on my Wii U. But whatever. But it's just it just goes to show like these things can be shut down with no plans at any moment. Like, and one of the other games I want to mention real quick, there's a game that I adored that I played with my partners and I played with some other friends called Knockout City. If you don't know what that is, it was a 3v3 dodgeball game where you had these big open areas, and then you had to hit someone a couple of times to get a point. And you had 2 hits before somebody got a point on you. It sounds basically, it was really, really stupid fun. And they were with EA for their online service. So the game was free. Or sorry, the game wasn't free. The game, you had to buy it. Or sorry. No, wait, hold on. Let me make sure I got this right. The game was free unless you bought it on another, like I was playing it on Game Pass. So I was playing it basically for free, or you could pay $20 to get it on console or whatever. Midway through, they decided to go free to play, because they didn't need to be a charged game anymore. And this game, by the way, has crossplay. So if you, it had crossplay out of the gate. So no matter if you're on Switch, I played it on both Switch and Xbox, and Sky and Karama played it on PC. I think Sky played it on Switch once as well. So anyways, so they went free to play because they were making enough money on the microtransactions for skins and stuff like that. So I bought it on Switch, but I bought it because when they announced they were going free to play, they said anybody who bought the game got in-game stuff, and I wanted it on Switch anyway, so I bought it on Switch just so I could have a copy of it because I didn't know how long I was going to have Game Pass for. And so I bought it, and then I got the free stuff for when that you got for being grandfathered in or whatever. And then they left EA to kind of do things on their own. And I guess it didn't go so well because they had some big collabs. Like their last big collab was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which is nothing.
Which is crazy because that's been on a lot of things. Like they collab that thing out. Like I guess Nickelodeon just needs money because like, pardon my French here, but they're prostituting the TMNT out to just any IP that they can put it in.
Pretty much. But I remember around that time, like we were kind of falling out of the game because there were some issues with it that hadn't been announced. There hadn't been taken care of. And then they announced a couple months later after that collab that the next season was going to be the last season of the game and it would be shutting down. But they said that the PC version will be updated so you can use your own servers to play the game. If you
but all right.
if you so wish to. I don't know if anybody does, but I haven't played since it shut down. So, but the PC version's free as well, so it's not like you're missing.
It's so crazy to me that they can just like, I mean, a game like, especially now, because again, though, there's certain games that servers just stay up so long, right? Like well after anyone's probably playing it, and yet a game that has a decent following, they're just like, it's just not worth it.
Well, it's just funny, even just like another example, like LGR recently did his video on Unreal Tournament 2004. Up until last year, all those games, all the Unreal Tournament games, all still had online functionality, but they just shut them down last year. Like, Unreal Tournament 2004 is a 20-year-old game, and they just shut it down. They just shut it down.
Well, the Halo 1 server went down in like 2013. Like the original Halo 1 server before the whole Master Chief Collection. So it's just weird to think about. Like you could go like to your local like thrift store and pick up a what feels like a DOS package for a game and go play it. But I mean, like even Second Life still has servers actively running. Like who the flying F is still playing Second Life?
And a lot of people. And the other thing I wanted to mention is just because the whole reason I wanted to bring this up is because there's been this thing going on online, headed by Ross from Accursed Farms, who I actually was offered to be a guest on the podcast, but he declined for certain reasons I'm not going to get into. But pretty cool guy. But he started off this thing where recently a game called The Crew, which is an Ubisoft game, has been shut down. So doesn't matter if you played, you played all your time. It was an online only game from what I understand. So doesn't matter, whatever, they just shut it down. So all the stuff, of course, you don't get refunded any of your microtransactions, you don't get any of that stuff back. They just don't do that. And so what he's trying to push right now is he's tired of this happening because, just another example, I'm streaming Fable right now, which is one of Kurama's favorite games of all time.
You're playing the Anniversary Edition, right?
Playing the Anniversary Edition.
Nice.
Fable 3 is only available on Xbox 360 physically. If you want to play Fable 3, you can't play it on Steam. It's been delisted. If you own a physical copy of Fable 3 for PC, it won't work because it has DRM that's no longer available.
Right, and it was part of that whole not Xbox Live. What do they call that back in the day?
Games for Windows Live.
Games for Windows Live.
I have
those programs.
My Mortal Kombat trilogy on Steam won't work because it's for Games for Windows Live and it's shut down. So they might have patched it though, because they patched Fallout recently to fix that problem because there were Fallout games that were on Games for Windows Live, and they finally patched it out on the Steam versions. So
yeah, the Steam versions are also highly censored. Like there's a lot of content that's been changed.
Yeah, but you can mod that. You can mod all that shit.
If you have, so for instance, I have Fable 3 on PC. There are workarounds to getting it to work. What I will state though is if you have Fable 3 digitally, like if you were one of the first people to buy or get it for Games for Gold because it was on there, it will work on modern consoles. So if you have a modern like Xbox Series X or Series S, it will play with online services, like full up. The whole community's still there. So it is possible. It's just a pain in the ass because, again, if you have... Well, I say that because now they're doing the backwards compatibility, and I think it's on there. If you have a physical...
I was going to say, I'm playing Anniversary on my Xbox One, so...
Yeah, I was going to say, if you have a... sorry, an ad popped up on the stream, and it scared the shit out of me. No, if you have an Xbox 360 edition of Fable 3 and you put it in a modern Xbox Series S or X, I think you can even turn on, like, forced 60 frames a second and stuff.
Yeah, they're enhanced. You can
so I do think that the game is still there. Now, if you were saying like I can't get it to work on Steam, yeah, you're absolutely right because games for Xbox.
No, but it's not just Steam. If you buy a physical PC version, it won't work.
Yeah, it's garbo.
Yeah. So there's this thing. Anyways, getting back to the point, there's this thing that Ross from Chris Farms is starting. There's a site called Stop Killing Games. .com, I think it's what it's called, stopkillinggames.com. But basically what it is it's an effort to get several governments across the world, specifically the France government, because they're the ones who shut down the Crew, and we're using the Crew as the catalyst for this thing, to like discuss this in legislature, because and these aren't and he's using government official for all these countries that he's put them in, government official petitions. These aren't like, change.org petitions. These are legal petitions from these governments
Right.
to get people to sign them, because if enough people sign them, they have to look at it and make it, and at least bring it up in Senate in multiple countries. So like, even like, and so there's specific ones, like for example, if you own the Crew, you can just go through France for that, because that's where Ubisoft's from, and that's where the game got shut down. If you don't, but you own games that have been shut down, there are petitions you can sign in your country. Like United States apparently is the hardest one, because you need quite a few signatures for that. Canada's not too bad. I've signed it for Canada, so that's
So
going through.
So let me ask you this, because you would probably have more insight on this. Okay,
Mhm.
so let's say that there's a legislation that comes through. What is the hope that will happen? Like,
So,
companies will not be able to shut a server down for a game ever, or
well, here's
they'll
the
have to
thing.
refund you if they do.
No,
Or
like what Ross is saying, he doesn't want them to keep servers open forever, because that's not feasible. He's not fighting for getting like refunds for anything. What he's fighting for is that what he wants to happen is that game companies cannot shut down a game without making it publicly available a way to play the game going forward.
so
So,
like the
so
ability to host like
yes,
private servers.
host your own
Okay,
server. Now, when GameSpy went down, which was a huge one that shut down a whole bunch of
yeah, I
games,
remember
luckily
that one. That was
luckily a lot of those games people reverse engineered to find a way to do it, but people had to do that. They had to put in lots of effort. In some games they couldn't, because they were missing source code. If you don't have parts of the source code, it's hard to do that. So his proposal is to try to have some kind of law that tells game companies, if you paid for a game, if you put money into a game that you played online and they're shutting the servers down, or they're removing the ability to re-download the game, they can't do that anymore. If they shut the servers down, they have to make an offline version available, or at least some way so that you can host your own servers. Because the problem is, we're looking at the rise of digital games now, and
mm,
there was an actual chart from another YouTuber I saw. I'm trying to remember his name now, but he basically compared physical to digital sales, and people think there's this huge discrepancy, like digital sales do better, but it's not really that big of a discrepancy. Yeah, digital sales do better, but it's like 55 to 45%. Like, not this like 80% of people are buying games digital, only 20% are buying physical. No, people are still buying physical games
right.
in droves. He also debunked a myth that people say is, well, when you get your physical game, if they have a DRM or always online for consoles, like, you can't play them anymore. And the fact of the matter is, that's just not true for a lot of games. There's a site where you can actually search, does it still work? And most games that say they won't work without being always online will actually work without being always online. So 10 years from now, if the PS4 shuts servers off for games, a bunch of physical games will still work, even though they had server check-ins. They just won't require them anymore, because that's not how it works. So,
Right.
which,
There's
the whole
yeah.
check-in thing is stupid to me, because if it's a single-player game, I shouldn't have to be on the internet to play it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, true. Yeah, so that's something I actually ran into with Dragon's Dogma. Now, here's the thing: I don't hate some of those features, right?
Mhm.
But like, there's a lot of like, okay, I'm gonna mention not really a game, but something that came out that was dropped of support, and now you can't even play it offline. Like, and I don't mean in the sense of like, oh, the game doesn't, like, physically they removed the feature from the console, and now it's not even an option. And do you
Mhm.
remember PlayStation Home?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so that was like way more. It was not popular enough that PlayStation thought to continue to support it, but it was more popular enough that there was like a lot of hubbub when they announced that they were shutting it down, because people had sank real money into stuff to get specific like furniture for their home and all this stuff. Like, it
Mhm.
was a viable online community, and it was the first major online experience that felt like a Second Life or a, IMVU and stuff like that, but for console owners, because like PlayStation or Xbox doesn't do that shit. They don't give two F's. Like, the closest thing you
Mhm.
had to that was like Nintendo's Mii's, like
Yeah.
that's, and even then it was just like pass and go or pass play or whatever that thing was
I
called.
I think I think in terms of games shutting down that you sink money into, I don't think refunding is going to work. It would just be too too expensive to go through something like that for every single game. What I would like to see is, say a game shuts down and you spent money on it, and like if on in-app purchases or whatever, the platform says, "Hey, here's credit towards something else, like another game or something like that."
Yeah, but at the same time, though, the problem is that like you are paying the company for that work, right? Like devil's advocate to this is like the problem you run into is they've already paid those employees and their super CEO who's rich the money that came from generating from those transactions, right? That paid for the development of new software, for the new game, so on and so forth. So there's no way for them to go, here's free credit towards something, because at that point it would be like negativing them money. Now,
this was and it's, I wasn't saying that's what we should do. That was like that's an idea.
I'm also not saying like I support giant corporate conglomerates of money making, but like I get why business wise you couldn't do that, because then like, you know, what if nobody plays your game? Then you're just in the hole anyway. So
I mean, the idea was to just put another idea out there, not to say this is what you should do. I think Ross's approach is the right one. You know, just get it in there, and like
and
the
if the
ultimate
legislation
goal is
stated like a month before closure, they have to be able to open source it, because at that point, it does not matter what the game is or is not selling, because if they cared about the sales in the game, the store would still be open and the game would still be active. So they like, I think the thing that's getting overzealous, and I wanted to mention to this because this is something that's happened recently, and I know it affects both of us, at least microscopically. There is a point where a dead game should not be sought after in court. I don't think that, like, you know, if I want to play, I don't know, like Saints Row the Third, the original one, online, and it doesn't work anymore, and I'm just playing Saints Row, and I figure out how to do stuff to it, I don't think that Deep Silver should come after me in court for it, right? Like, I don't, because it doesn't matter anymore. That property is now dead. So with that, you know, I think it's crazy that people are out there trying to do genuine, and I know it's not all of it, but genuine game preservation. You know, these are games that will not exist in the future without some adoring fan trying to prop the community up and keep it moving.
I know that this has been thrown around a lot, but 87% of video games you can't get anymore. 87%.
Yeah, and it's going to be like that going into the future. Just think about games that have come out recently, like Elden Ring. There is going to be a point where Elden Ring is not a game you can just obtain. Like, unless you own it. Because again, like, that's the thing about the digital market, right? And that's the scary thing, because even physical content doesn't have the game on anymore. It's just an access key to online.
That's, again, like I said before, that's not 100% true. There's been a site that's debunked all that.
There's definitely been,
some,
but like, again,
but like,
there's like Red Dead Redemption 2 on console was literally like, it was broken into 2 discs, and one of them was just textures, and the other one was like check-in gameplay for DRM. But like, it's just crazy to me that there's certain games out there that at some point, like if Steam goes down, right? Because Steam is huge, but it doesn't mean it's going to last forever. Just like YouTube may not last forever. If anything happens and the servers crash, you lose access to your games. You know, if there's not a system check, because every time you launch Steam, it verifies, there's an offline mode, but you have to go back online every so often or it considers you not accessible. So if you go to log in and it can't detect your game, you just don't have access to it anymore. You're just kind of SOL. And this is a weird thing to think about.
This is part of the reason why they're pushing for this, because like, it's not just online games that have, you know, online servers. It's digital games that you will lose access to. Now, I'll say on Nintendo, in Nintendo's defense, they did bring the Wii Shop channel back so you could re-download your old games. However, you can't purchase new games on there.
Right.
Same thing with the eShop on the 3DS and Wii U. You can go on there and re-download
I'm going to pour one out for my 3DS buddies, because I never owned a Wii U, but I still to this day stand the 3DS as my favorite Nintendo console of all time. Not even for the 3D purposes, because the 2DS is fine too. Just that generation is my favorite generation of games. I fucking love it.
And so the idea is like, and you know what, Nintendo's been in a step in the right direction because they've had Virtual Console, which you can't get anymore, anyways. But or the NSO apps, but that's just a small percentage of the games, and I understand why, because the amount of time and money it would take for Nintendo to relicense all those games, have to go back to the original developers if they still exist, get the licenses for that so that they could put them out there, would take a lot of time.
Oh,
Now
yeah.
they do have third-party stuff on the Nintendo Switch Online, which is great, but it's only a small portion in what they could get. So it's like, it's not up to, and I'm not saying it's Nintendo's responsibility to make sure all of the library on all of their consoles is available all the time.
Right.
That's not how that works. It should be in the developer's responsibility to make them available in other ways so that they are obtainable. Because
fuck yeah.
if you wanna buy Super Mario Brothers, Nintendo will sell you that game forever. But if I want to buy Super Mario Brothers for my Wii, I can't do that because the shop for it is closed down. But if and
it's a whole
Nintendo
thing.
Likes making money.
Yeah, it's fucking, oh my god. And then there's a whole thing about like with dead games and how they operate in terms of like how the selling goes and license. Like if you want to talk about, we mentioned Ubisoft. This is an actual thing. I am this is again pulling out of the fun. There was a couple of Ubisoft games that I really did like. When Ghost Recon Wildlands came out, I was a huge Wildlands fan. Loved that game. It felt like a breath of fresh air for that genre of gaming because it was like, I can kind of just do whatever the hell I want. It was like an open world game for people who like military complex style shenanigans. And it was like, wow, this is cool. Recently, I found out that there were 2 third-party licensed missions within the games. Both of them, both Breakpoint, the sequel, and Wildlands, the original. In Wildlands, it was the Predator, because you're in Bolivia. So you go to the Bolivian woods, and you and a group of friends could fight the Predator. Due to licensing in 2020, they removed that mission from the game completely. You can never play it again. So now there's just nothing in that area. It's just a dead spot. And it's the same thing with the Terminator missions in Breakpoint. And it's like, imagine going into someone's game that they own and removing content.
It's and that's again, that's another thing that amendment or clause that they might have to put. They might have to say any games that make licensing deals, once those licensing deals are severed, the content must remain in the game. Because that needs to be something that needs to be put in for any licensing deal. Like, look at Fortnite.
Oh yeah,
look at how much shit is in Fortnite. Like you mentioned at the start,
the fucking imaging from the game. They're just like, hey, you know those skins you spent money on? Nope. Oh my god, here's another great example of that shit.
Hold on, before you go on, they must have some kind of clause for that because, like, sure, when the license is over, you can't buy it anymore, but it's going to be one of those things where like the content was still available in the game. They can't like Toei Animation can't just go to Epic and be like, you have to take Goku out of the game now.
Yeah,
they can't do that.
Toriyama himself did it, but we didn't, so I need you to remove him from the game.
Yeah, no, Fortnite must have some kind of special deal that tells all these licensees when this is over, people are still allowed to use this content in our game. And
I mean, and it's crazy because like, so again, a prime example, Metal Gear Solid 3 was removed from Steam at one point because the licensing, and this is no joke, for the historical the footage that they used in the game from like the Truman's presidency era, they couldn't re-up the license, so they had to remove the game from Steam because they couldn't sell a game that they didn't have the continued license for. So they had to go get the fucking licensing for historical footage, and then they could put the game back out. And it was like, what in the shit?
Yeah.
Like,
that's so probably stupid. Why that could be one of the reasons why they're remaking Snake Eater. Like,
well, I mean, it's just because there's so much to it. I didn't realize. See, this is the thing. It's like I didn't realize how nuanced licensing for third parties are. That's why it's like we love like Dead Cells crossover with Castlevania. We love shit like that. Oh, give it to me, fucking crossovers. I'm excited. But like, I didn't realize like how much backdoor handshaking has to happen for that kind of shit to exist because there's so much when it comes to intellectual property, and it's both a blessing for the people that created it, right? Like if you're a part of a team, right? Like if somebody came up and was like, hey, we're gonna put we're gonna put you in Smite 2. Like you were gonna be a playable character.
It's funny because I was going to be a playable character in a game, but that kind of fell through. But one of the clauses that
I get to play a game where you get to play, I get to play.
Well, one of the clauses that I had is that if we're gonna do this, I want it so that when our licensing deal's over, that people can still use the character. They can still use me in the game. I don't want to
never
just
end your
away.
licensing deal. Got it. Shakes hands.
Well, no. Like, I mean, if they don't want to re-sign me, for example, because you'd have to re-sign for that kind of thing.
Or you could agree to a single payment term, and then they just own the licensing in that version. Like they would have to,
which I wouldn't care.
They would basically have to. They'd have to create a version of you different than the normal version of you, so that one could be protected. Because at that point, if you accidentally, like, let's say, like your avatar was the same, like that's copyright infringement. You could be knocked for your own character.
Yeah.
That's where it gets tricky. Is like people. It's like the DMCA shit for Twitch, where like you play your own song off your own album, and then you get DMCA blocked.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Oh, speaking of which, okay, all this to tie back in because we're talking about dead games and things being brought up. Did you see? And I promise it's the only thing I'll say about it. Did you see? Nintendo officially came after Gary's mod.
I heard about that.
20 years worth of Nintendo content was immediately cease and desisted off of the website. The entire Steam workshop of Nintendo imagery, sounds, level designs, if it looked remotely similar to anything that could have been a shared asset, based off asset, or original asset ripped from a game, it was completely washed from the Steam workshop. That's 20 years of people's modding work gone because of a cease and desist lawsuit.
Yeah, Nintendo is one of the worst for it, and that's why.
And it's so sad because they were like the pro gaming people. They were like, oh my god.
And that's why I would love to see like a law get passed in Japan where they're not allowed to do that anymore. Where like
it won't happen in Japan; it'll be everywhere else, and Nintendo will just go, "We're just not going to sell to you guys anymore." We don't need everywhere else. We make a ton of money in Japan. Fuck you guys. And then they just go about their business, and people are like illegally importing like copies of games in and getting them like underground translated to English.
I don't think that would ever happen. The North American market is too big for Nintendo.
Oh,
it's too big of a market. Like they won't. They will bend the knee if you hit them where it hurts, which means their money. So,
yeah, but here's the thing, and this is the problem we run into with people nowadays. It doesn't matter what they do, people are still going to throw money at them. They could literally come out and go, we're going to kill Mario in a game, and also Princess Peach is a 40-foot tall gorilla man now. And people, like thousands of angry comments, whole chat rooms opened, and people would still buy the game so successfully that's just the canon of what the
I love
how
what you chose, because you just mentioned someone's fetish, like the
40-foot tall gorilla man Peach. But it's just like it's one of those things where it's like it doesn't matter what we think about it, right? Because there's always going to be degrees of fandom,
right?
Nintendo is one of those companies that they would have to come out and like sacrifice a child on public television to get the ire of people to stop giving them money. Because again, people like ourselves who are like, hey, if all of us don't buy this specific product, then it will give Nintendo a specific image that goes, oh, this hurt our sales when we did this. Let's not do that. No, because if we go, we're not buying this DLC because we don't support bad business practices, right? Like, why should my Mario Kart have microtransactions in it? That's ridiculous. We're not doing it. There's a 7-year-old out there with his mom's credit card that is just absolutely going to rack that shit up because they don't care. It doesn't mean anything to them. That's ingrained in the society of gaming now. And the problem is that the majority of people who want to actively fight against these, the people trying to save these games, the people are equally outnumbered by people who are going, who gives a shit about the Crew? Like, why do we care? There's a sequel. Why would I not just play the sequel? Like,
the problem is it's becoming, well, here's the thing. It's becoming more and more a problem as time has gone on, because like it's been disproven that physical games are going away. Right. Even though Microsoft says
They're trying real
going
hard
digital
to
open.
not make them a
like
thing, but
like they're trying to make them go away, but they're not going away because they still make too much money. So it's one of those, and people still buy them even though you think most of us have digital libraries. Like most of the games I bought recently are digital, but still I buy physical games. So it's one of those things where like you have to think like the point of this whole thing is we're getting tired of games no longer being available or parts of games no longer being available. And when you try to and the worst part is trying to preserve them to the industry makes you out to be a pirate, makes you out to be somebody who's a scammer. When all they're trying to do is
cost
preserve
you
games.
Millions. It's such a crazy thing.
It's a double-edged sword because it's a double-edged sword
emulation has now been deemed piracy in all forms, and I'm just like, what a crazy thing.
Not necessarily,
which is insane. Well, again, the charge for the Switch emulator, because they were like, all we did was create a system that could play.
No,
like, no,
here's the
emulation.
problem. Here's the problem with that one. They were making money off of Patreon, so that was the sticking point. Yes,
right, but
Nintendo
like, if you're
technically
not selling the product.
Nintendo selling. Well, it does like Nintendo. That was what caused Nintendo to go after them because there was money being made in it. Emulation itself is not illegal. It's a fair use if it is done without stealing things that.
But see, that's where the problem comes from, is because the way that the law, and again, I could be wrong. Again, if you know more than me, you know more than me. I'm sorry. The way that the article was presented to me and the people that I was reading through it about was that emulation, by Nintendo's standards, any form of emulation is a series of theft because it is accessing information in the form of a game on an unintended product. You are selling our code or using a form of our code to access something that it was never intended to be played on.
Yeah, their argument was
to be on PC, it would be on PC.
Their argument was that the emulator, I'm assuming you're talking about the Stuvo one, like the emulator that they sued for.
Well, the one that they immediately made a sequel to, and then that one already got pulled for the same reason.
They bypassed, because Nintendo's argument was not only were they profiting off of it, technically, I know it's not technically profit, but money was being passed along, but it bypassed securities features in the Switch, and the thing is though, that was necessary. Every emulator does that because the point is it's emulating the hardware. And
you're using software in place of the hardware created to access the game.
When Sony went after both Bleem and the I forget the other emulator that was in the 90s for the PlayStation, they technically lost the case because they still won in the end because the litigation just made the companies go bankrupt, but they ultimately won the case, or they lost the case because the judge ruled out that making an emulator is a fair use. If they had to prove that something like Bleem was hurting the PlayStation brand, and they couldn't do that. They couldn't.
Yeah, well, especially at that time when computers weren't openly available, especially in the 90s. Like, but see, that's changed because now you can run a complete Switch through Dolphin Emulator, which, rest in peace, on your phone. You could just play the Switch, not well, but like it was on your, like you can play complete GameCube on your phone. And the accessibility has changed. And that's what scares Nintendo, is that at some point, all it will take is the release of a single game, and now the entire population has that game without having to buy it, and it works better than on their console. And that's what pisses them off, because, again, they can't make money on potentials if you can play their games on your phone. And, again, this is what really chaps my ass on this one. People were bringing back games that now the resale value of physical hardware is through the fucking roof. Pokemon Emerald right now goes for $350.
Yeah.
Who's going to spend that other than a collector? Right.
Yeah.
So in that sense, you can go on the internet right now, download an APK on an Android device, and play that game on your phone with zero problems. And the thing for it is that to me is a game that is well past its prime. But Nintendo's belief is that is a Nintendo property. Whether or not it's active or not, we should have the rights to make the money off of it. And if you were pirating it, that is a loss of a potential sell. And just because you aren't paying for it means that you aren't paying them for it.
Then,
and that's where they come after you.
And that's where the argument comes out and says, well, if I can't download it this way, sell it to me. But guess what isn't available? You can't buy Pokemon Emerald. You can't buy it.
Which is such a crazy thing because, like, again, there's an emulator on the website or like through Nintendo Online, through the Switch. And I don't understand that, like, Game Boy and Game Boy Advance ports should be the easiest thing ever because, like, again, there's no work to be involved. The system can definitely handle it. People are modding original Game Boy SPs to play like GameCube. Like, it's not hard. I don't understand why they don't want to make that money.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Pokemon because one of the biggest questions people have is why aren't Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow on NSO? Why are they not on there yet? There's no good reason.
The honest answer that I've gotten, the most believable answer I've gotten, is because they don't want people living in that nostalgia. They want people chasing the new one because that's where the money is.
But they would make so many more NSO subscriptions if they put those on there.
But the subscription is a mean to an end. Remember, because this is the first time in Nintendo's history since the Switch has come out that they have offered an online. Everything that they've done, just like PlayStation Plus before they got hacked, was free. If you just wanted to play a game online, if the game had online access, you were just in. Then they went, well, now we're going to charge you. I don't know what the monthly is. I always do the yearly one. It's like $79 or $89. It's like, here's $100 a month to have online access, which, by the way, was a free service up until now. And now we're also going to give you X, Y, and Z. Everything else is just like a small. It's like the carrot at the end of the stick. Like, hey, you're already paying for it. Here's to keep you from complaining every time we jack up the prices on it. Look at the carrot. Don't look at me. Look at the carrot. It's like, your game's like, great, thanks. You're finally bending the knee a little bit to all the people that are complaining that you're axing all of your legacy games. But, like, it's just, it's such interesting business practices for a group of people that were the innovators on how things worked game-wise for so long. And I don't understand why they're the bad guys now. Because everybody stands for Nintendo during the console wars because they're like, well, the Nintendo doesn't give a flying F what's going on. They're the good guys here. Screw Sony and Xbox. They're just kind of doing their own thing. And now, like, Xbox and PlayStation look like the good guys. Because, like, speaking of emulation, full circle in that shit with Sony sold the PlayStation Mini, which was an emulator box that you could just buy.
Well, so did Nintendo, and so did
with the Game & Watch. But like seriously, like, they literally, and what was crazy is it released with 5 games on it, and one of them was the original Wild Arms. And you could buy this console.
It wasn't 5 games. It was like 15 games.
Yeah, it was a decent amount. It was literally just rips from a emulator website. Like, they didn't even put any effort in. They literally took the source code from an emulator that already existed, slapped it onto their own proprietary hardware, and threw some games on it, and then shipped it out. Which meant that all you had to do was plug that shit up into a computer, and you could add whatever games you wanted to.
Well, as somebody who's modded theirs, I do say it's a little more complicated than that. You need a special USB stick, like, thing. It's a bit of a pain in the ass, but you can do it. The one thing I'll say is, because we've gotten a couple of responses in the chat here, is that first off, Blondie, your comment, yeah, I know the only GameStop closing in your town is closing, but you know GameStop's not the only place you can get video games.
Also, to state, Blanca, I promise you, that is not because physical media is dying. Look at where GameStop is gone as a company. Like, and it's like Funko Pops, merchandise. They're like a second in Charles now. Like, they're like, gaming is like almost on the back burner. And this is coming from a guy who loved GameStop. Like, I fought for that company when they were doing when I got the fucking GameStop credit card when it came out, to tell you how big of a dumbass I am, at their 900% APR. And I racked up every point I could get on that damn thing. Like, I was a GameStop nut. I was the guy that set up at the midnight releases of games. I dressed up as a Batman character for Arkham Asylum. Like, I did the stuff. And they're not the same company. It's not fun to go into a GameStop anymore and talk shop with the owners, because they're not the people that play the games anymore. They're a preteen kid that's just there for a paycheck, and the last big game they played was Pokemon Go. Like, the environment has changed. They push more products.
Reggie couldn't even
game related.
Reggie couldn't even say the company. He's gone already. So, like,
yeah, it's sad because I really wanted GameStop and EB Games and all of these places to last, because they were like the last bastion of popularized gaming culture. You know, it's like going to your local like board game shop for D&D night and seeing that they're like, yeah, we're just closing up shop because like not enough people want to buy stuff from us. They want to go online and stuff. And like, yeah, but also, guy, you're not selling the board games anymore. You're selling peripherals. Like, you, I can't get mad at them for not selling shit if they're not actually selling games.
Yeah. No, and that's fair too, Blondie. But I'm sure there's some sort of shop in your town that will sell new games.
Look, man, at this point, Amazon everything as big as they are, most games can be bought physically from Amazon.
I wouldn't say use Amazon either, because for me, I have a local I have a couple local game stores that I do pre-orders for games, so I'd rather go in there. However, I don't pre-order too many games these days because I think it's also insane to pay for a game before you even get it. Like, they've already sold the game before you pick it up. So now with a lot of things, like, it's just like, Walmart and Best Buy, that's fair. They don't do pre-orders or whatever, but you still get new games there.
Yeah, and I still think Walmart.com is a fucking fever dream because you can find some crazy shit on there that I would never have imagined that Walmart would sell.
It always sucks because I always see Cheap ED or Cheap Ass Gamer on Twitter saying stuff is super on sale on Walmart, and then I go to the Canadian version and the item that's available doesn't exist. Like, the X fridge was on sale for like $100, and I was like, I want this, but I couldn't.
They had one at Target of all places. I got a notification on my Target app. They're like, we noticed that you buy gaming stuff. Are you interested in the X fridge? And I was like, no way. And my local one had it for $50, and I was like, do I want a $50 X fridge?
I mean, I just want one to have so I can have cold drinks on hand.
I genuinely, it is one of the funniest calls to a fan group of a console of all time. Hey, your new console looks like a fridge. Well, dumbass, here's what we'll do for you there. Here's the Xbox fridge.
The X fridge, yeah.
Like, what a meme come to life. But no, I mean, it's just online shopping is pretty much killed brick and mortars anyway. Let's be honest. Like, GameStop's majority of their sales is online at this point because people don't like I sound like a super boomer. People don't like human interaction. And I know this because if you just go online and talk to people, they'll all admit that if they could just find a way to cheaply do things without leaving their house, they would rather do that. Like, the mystique of going to a mall is gone, which sucks because I loved malls. I thought that was cool as shit. And now it's just empty, sad places where homeless people congregate.
It's funny because like my town has 3 malls, but only one of them is actually good. The other 2 are just kind of whatever. One of them is also under a theater, so
see, that's always cool. I liked the idea of like, you want to go catch a movie at the mall? We can go eat in the food court and stuff. Like,
the cool mall used to have a theater, but they don't anymore. It got converted to something else. I don't know, Sports Check or something. But the movie theater that I go to in my town, which I think is the only movie theater now, they have there's a mall right below it, and nobody goes to that mall. Actually, where I bought my original Xbox 360, because they were selling refurb units, and they were refurbs of the 2005 2006 restocks, which was my bad. But I wanted a 360, and it red ringed, and then I bought a 2009 model arcade.
Oh, the arcade!
I just slapped the hard drive from the old one on it, and and that one still lived. Luckily, I think because it's 2009, that's when they figured out the red ring problem. But
just crazy shit. Do you remember the years of consoles where, like, if you put it in the oven with a towel on it, it'll superheat? Like, the crazy
the towel trick where you force it to overheat, that worked.
Oh yeah,
for me.
Do you remember seeing? Do you remember when the first PS3s came out and it had the emulator or like the hardware of a PS2 in it, and you could pop open the case topping and it had that big metal endoskeleton? And
I think so.
You like, okay, this will live in my head until I either get dementia or pass. There's a video somewhere at that time frame, like MySpace age, of a dude cooking a pork chop on his PS3 because that metal box got so damn hot. And he's just in there. He like slaps butter on it. He's just cooking a pork chop while he plays Uncharted. And I
will say the backwards compatible PS3s I've had have been fan on the whole time. They get
Oh, yeah.
loud.
Yeah, but God, what a cool console idea. Like,
Yeah.
PlayStation used to be the gods of backwards compatibility. I was like, man,
The
that's
PS4
like,
can't
you
even
tell
play
me my,
PS1 games. Like,
you know, it's
that's
like,
how
dude,
pathetic is that?
I was like, dude, the PS2 can play PS1 games. It's like 2 consoles in one. And then they were like, hey, the PS3 can play PS1, PS2, and PS3. And I was like, this is God. This
And
is the
in high
greatest thing.
definition.
Yeah, and then the Game Boy was like, hey, the Game Boy Advance can play Game Boy games. And I'm like, I appreciate that. And then the
And Game Boy
DS
Color
dropped, and they're
games.
like, the DS can play like Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games as well as DS games. I'm like,
Well,
we
sorry,
lived
no.
in.
The DS can only play GBA games. It cannot play Game Boy
I
or
could
Game
have
Boy
sworn I
Color
used to
games.
shove the big ass fucking Game Boy Color games in there.
They won't work. They'll fit, but they will not work. The hardware switch for it is not in on it. So.
No, hold on. I believe you, but for my own brain, I swear to God, I played Blue on my DS Lite.
You were mistaken.
Yes. Continue talking. I have to scratch this itch on my brain. I'm so sorry.
You are looking it up?
Yes.
You can look it up, but I tell you, GB and GBC games will not work on the DS. They did not include the hardware switch for it. Also, they would have to redo the backwards compatibility, which try every single possible game, because Nintendo used to be crazy about their backwards compatibility and would do that. So
yeah, I was super like when the Switch was announced, I genuinely was like, oh, like I'm gonna be able to play my 3DS games on it. And they're like, actually, this is the first console in history that says fuck all the other previous consoles. None for you. And I was like,
but you can rebuy Wii U games.
I was like, I gotta carry my 3DS with me all the time, which is super sad because I would love, and you know this, I've talked about this before. My favorite 3DS game is a port of a PS2 game that I hold very true to my, like very dear to me, and that's Dragon Quest VIII. And Journey of the Cursed King, when it was announced on the 3DS, I literally went out and bought the game before I even had a 3DS. Like, that's how much that game means to me. I just owned a copy so that it wouldn't run out. And when they announced it for the 3DS and I got it and I played it and it was awesome because it had additional content and all this great shit, I played the game. And then they announced the Switch. And I'm like, oh, they just announced that Breath of the Wild's going to be on both the Wii U and that and all this other stuff. And there was a couple of other ports from the 3DS that were coming to the Switch. I was like, oh, this game's definitely going to be on there. And they're like, oh, nope, fuck you. And I was like, I cannot express to you the amount of sadness and immeasurable disappointment that I felt from knowing that a game that I had waited my whole life for was not coming to the Switch.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day
is ruined. What a genius! No, just God, like I've been defeated few times in my life by a game, and that was one of them.
Well, and so I also had a discussion recently with somebody about remasters and remakes, and there's a couple of things I have to say about that, which I do want to say real quick. Though I think what we should do is we've got an ad break started, so we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back to it, we'll talk about remasters and remakes. And I also need to use the bathroom. So
yeah, that works.
We're going to take a small break and we'll be back in a little bit, guys. All right, everybody, welcome back. We're back. The ad's over. And yeah, we're going right back into it. Yes, sirree.
Yes, sirree, we're doing it. Woo! Mr.
So,
Poopy Butthole.
remakes and remasters. Genuinely, I think they're good things because it is an updated release, usually of an old game. However, I have a bone to pick with a certain company that I wish would make different games than continuing to make the same game over and over again.
I feel like you're about to shit on a company that I enjoy. I'm listening with bated breath.
Is that company Naughty Dog?
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Whew.
So The
It's
Last
like
of Us.
Capcom over here, like, oh damn.
No, I love Capcom. Are you kidding me? They've done some shitty stuff, but I still like them. The Last of Us came out on the PS3. It was a late PS3 release. It was a big game. Everybody thought it was cool. I thought it was meh. I didn't really care. I still have my copy sealed on my shelf that came with my PS3 Super Slim. Didn't really care for it. They remaster it for PS4. Okay, totally makes sense. The game came out as a late PS3 game. That makes sense to have a remastered port on your new system. Okay, cool, that's fine. They released a sequel on the PS4. Cool, whatever. I think the sequel looks like hot garbage, or it doesn't look like hot garbage. The story is hot garbage, so I don't care. They remade the game again for PS5. Now you can play the remastered version on PS5 already. So you don't need this. But for some reason, they decided to remake the game. And I'm like, yes, it's different. Yes, they've technically fixed things, but like, you already did it last generation, and now you're doing it again. It's like, come the fuck on.
Yeah, and then they remade the first game as a complete remake and not just a remaster.
Yeah,
so,
well, it's so stupid though that they just remastered it like a few years ago.
Well, get this. I have a buddy of mine that loves that game, right? But he's super pissed at them because they made one change on the new version. When The Last of Us came out, that's all it was titled. The Last of Us. That was the game. When The Last of Us Part 2 came out, it was called The Last of Us Part 2. When they recreated The Last of Us, the first one, they added the term Part 1 in there.
That's in retrospect, though. That's not a big deal.
Right. But it's the idea that they were like, oh, the standalone narrative of Joel is no longer considered separate. Like, it's like if they came back and were like, yeah, you know, the new Final Fantasy is just going to be called Part 2 of the Final Fantasy before it because we've just decided that these aren't separate games anymore. You know, now it's a series. And it's like, well, did you need to go back and change the first one's name? Like, honestly?
Yeah. It's and like, I'll bring up something here that's a good point here in a minute. But the thing that I'm just about is like, I'm fine with remasters and remakes as long as they're not doing it every generation. Like if they like, you know, another thing that pisses me off about remaster. Well, I'll get to this in a second. I guess one of the things that pisses me off about remasters is the Final Fantasy VII one. Final Fantasy VII remake, because they split it up. They're splitting it up into 3 games. So you pay $60 for the first game remake, and it's a quarter of the content from the original Final Fantasy VII, with stuff they added, I will admit, but it's a quarter of the content. So if you want the next part of the game, you have to buy it again, this time for $70, because now it's on PS5, and PS5 games sometimes go up to $70. And so, to me, I'm not going to play those until all 3 games are available for a single price. That's the way I'm looking at it, including the DLC. Like, because I'm like, I'm not gonna spend, you know, 60 to 70 US dollars, which is like 90 to 100 Canadian, for part of a game. That's something that pisses me off about remakes, when they do part of a game. And they say, well, you'll buy the rest of it later. So far, Final Fantasy VII is the only example I can think of in modern times, but I know it's been done before.
Yeah, I mean,
Because most times
there's
when you buy a
examples of it.
remaster, most time you get a remaster these days, you get like a trilogy or something. Like they did that Metro remaster, and you got like both games, or was there
Yeah,
more than two games?
Metro 2077 or 20 something, and then 2177
2035.
maybe, and then
Yeah.
and then it was Metro Last Light as the Reduxes. But then again, that was just an up. That was not a remake. That was a remaster. That was just upping the texture, taking the frame rate lock off of it, that kind of stuff. Because they
Mm-hmm.
basically just unbroke it for new gen console.
And
You want to
and
talk about like what feels like real remakes that show me that it can be done versus not. Now, okay, caveat, right? Final Fantasy VII is a from the ground recreation of the
mm-hmm.
story of another game. Okay.
Right.
The first loading screen alone has more gigabytes in it than the entirety of a single PS1 disc.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I get it. It's large. The scale is large. The
Yeah.
quality of what people are expecting now, unless it's a pixel
But you can
remaster,
see the point that
is
I'm
big.
making.
Oh
You
yeah,
see
no,
the point that I'm making.
because
They want to
equatably,
sell one game 3 times.
yeah, because back in the day, right, that was the greatest that technology would give me, and I got 3 discs for it, like at the same time, like the whole game.
Mm-hmm.
This time they're breaking it up into chunks that are it's like episodic games. I am not a fan of games that release in episodes. I think
Yeah.
I
don't
give
that
like
either.
2 games a pass for that, and one of them is The Wolf Among Us because I love that game. But beyond that, though, but there was another game that was like, hey, what if we did the same thing, but we're gonna give you all of the games at the same fucking time? And that was the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, which was like we not a full ground up remake, but like went in, found the source code, remastered the game as best they could. It wasn't 3 separate releases for $60. I got 3 games and all of their
Mm-hmm.
DLC at the same time, and that was it. There's
The
no
the
microtransactions. It was just buy the game. There they are. Have a great time.
the Klonoa remakes, you got both games remastered, or sorry, remade completely, instead of buying them each separately. Now there are some games I understand, like making I know if they eventually do remaster the original Paper Mario, I understand they're RPGs, they're long. You don't need to include the entire games in these, but like the Metal Gear Collection that came out recently. Like,
which
it's going to include, which apparently is not great,
nightmare.
but it's going to include 3 Metal Gear Solid games, and apparently there's another volume where more of them are going to be available.
Yeah, there's going to be 3 volumes total.
But that is different from them remaking Snake Eater, which is a ground-up remake of one single game. My problem is when you take a game and you're like, okay, we're going to remake it, but we're only going to do the first like quarter of the game, and then we're going to sell the rest of it as separate games. That's what Final Fantasy is doing, and the reason they're doing it is because they can get away with it. Because it's Final Fantasy VII. It's one of the most popular RPGs of all time. They can get away with selling it 3 times. And to me, who likes Final Fantasy VII, but I wouldn't even put it in my top 10, I don't give 2 shits about buying the game 3 times. I will get the Final Fantasy VII remakes when they're all available with all the DLC in one package.
Look, I'm telling you right now, I like Final Fantasy VII as much as the next game, but I will always be salty that they chose Final Fantasy IX over Final Fantasy VIII for the next one. I'm super pissed. I will never let Square Enix be my best friend because they were like, what game should we from the ground up remake next? And they went, let's do Zidane from Final Fantasy IX. Let's give
Final Fantasy IX is a great game, though.
But 8, they gave us a half-assed remaster.
Well,
and
then
we're like, be happy with the
right?
table scraps and but I mean, like,
you know the story behind that. They lost the source code for 8, and they had to rebuild a lot of that game with what they had from like demos and stuff. That's why the character models look different.
And then some random dude found part of it in like his email from like the 90s.
That's so funny to me that happened. But I mean, it's just going back to another point you said where they make changes to. That's another thing that you have to be careful with remasters and remakes is when you change things that meant something in the original game. I'm trying to think of. I know there was one they did. I'm trying to think of something where they did.
Oh, there's a new one that's come out recently that they've. Here's all the games at once. But they pull something. Okay, look. Caveat. I am a fan of studios understanding their mistakes and learning from them, right? And I mean that in all senses. Bad game design being corrected. If there's bugs in a game, fixing the bugs. in political correctness, and again, I know that that's a hot buzzword that people like, but there is a place for it, right? Understanding that you can't do and say certain things because people have educated themselves beyond that point.
Mhm.
I'm all for it. There's also a point where changing things because of political correctness can undermine how the process of a game was made, right?
Mhm.
If it's that bad, don't remake the game. You don't have to. My point of all this is the 1, 2, and 3 remaster of Tomb Raider that dropped.
Mhm.
They removed content from the game because of censorship.
Mhm.
So now there's like posters missing in the game because they were a little racy, or they changed textures to not look as indigenous because it offended people. And like, what? Like again, and this is an IP that I'm very upset about anyway. Because did you hear what the new developer of the game that now holds the IP for Tomb Raider said?
No, what do they say?
It's no longer called Tomb Raider.
What?
Lara Croft is no longer a Tomb Raider because that's insensitive to the people that she robs from. So now she's part of an organization that stops tomb raiding.
Mm.
That's it. Because apparently perpetuating the idea that in a video game I could go in and grab cool artifacts like Indiana Jones is bad. I'm supposed to respect them. And she also doesn't kill anymore, which means that she just punches people and goes, "Don't steal things," and runs off.
Hold on here. The reason something like that changes is because of the perception of museums. You like the big museum in the UK refuses to hand over artifacts that have been well known to belong to certain cultures.
Yeah.
Because they don't think that they can preserve them, which is a bullshit reason. It's a bullshit reason. And so if they want something like that, where Tomb Raider, where they're changing the future of the character for stuff like that, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing because times have changed. However, what I will say is the devil's advocate to that is I had never seen Reservoir Dogs. When they did their like 30th anniversary, whatever, and they put it back in theaters, I went and I saw it in theaters.
And they put that giant warning at the beginning of the movie?
No.
Oh.
Here's what I'm going to say. They left the movie intact, even though there's a bunch of white guys saying the N-word.
Yep.
It's because it's supposed to be like a capture of a place and time in history with mafias and whatnot, where that was commonplace. Now, Quentin Tarantino's gone on saying that he would like to remake Reservoir Dogs. He would have liked to remake Reservoir Dogs with all black cast anyways, so it made more sense. But I still don't think... would I feel better if they just cut that part out because it really didn't mean anything in the grand stand of the movie? Yeah, probably. But I'm also of the mind to say, messing with art is kind of a very difficult path to go through. Look at Star Wars. Perfect example. You cannot they will not make the original Star Wars trilogy in their original form available for you to view. You can only get special editions. And this, again, ties all the way back into our original topic, whereas, like, there are versions of games you cannot get anymore, and they will not make them available. And trying to get them is considered piracy. It's a not a double-edged sword. What's the word I'm thinking of? It's a I can't think of it right now. I can't think of the thing I'm trying to say. It's a have your cake and eat it too situation, I guess. Right. You can play this. You can want this game and play it, but you can't play it because we didn't sell it to you.
Yeah, there's and again that's
and we won't sell it to you because we won't sell it to you. And that's the thing too. Like, there are so many people out there who are begging, especially now that Disney owns it, begging them to release the originals. And there must be some clause in the contract with Lucas saying that you can never release the original trilogy Star Wars movies the way they came out theatrically. Only special editions can be available, which is so petty. Which is funny because George Lucas is a hypocrite because he fought against the colorization of black and white films. and then submitted Star Wars as one of the first things in the National Film Registry. It's there, the original version, but nobody can watch it. But it's there.
There's a lot to be said about that. Yeah, there's
you see what I'm saying? Like Nintendo could be like, Nintendo or any company would be like, we have these games, but you can't play them because we're not going to sell them. And if you try to play them by other means, because we won't make them available, shame on you. You're a pirate. It's just,
well, the icing on that cake, full circling all of this, is Ubisoft's statement of gamers and media consumers should just get used to not owning their products.
Exactly. And that's the whole antithesis to this, because their response was so poor to this. Oh, get used to, because that's what people say. When you buy a game digitally, you don't own it. You own a license to play it, which is such an ass backwards way of doing things.
And licenses expire.
Exactly.
That's the crazy part. There is someone out there that stated the future of gaming will be you'll be able to play a game forever, but every year you'll have to rebuy it.
Yeah,
you'll just have to keep renewing your license.
Ridiculous.
So it'd be like, you buy the game for $60, you get it for 5 years, and then every year after that it's $15. Now, here's the pro circle of all of that, right? So if I'm renewing a licensing for a game, let's take the Crew since that was the hot button one. If I'm paying, along with every other player that wants to play this game, an additional $15 a year to play it, then there is 1,000% more of a chance that someone's going to support this title, right? Because the money is pouring in regardless of microtransactions, because you have to keep paying to play that game. There is more money involved to pay people to keep the server moving, to make bug fixes, so on and so forth. So yeah, same thing could be said with them charging supposedly $100 for a game, which is its own crock of shit. But the problem is that they're not doing that, right? If you increase the price of something, I'm expecting either the quality or the longevity of it to continue, right? If I'm selling you toilet paper for $5 a roll, and you're like, ouch, but I need toilet paper, and then the next day it's $50 a roll, either that's extortion because I know you need toilet paper, or this toilet paper is going to cure cancer. Like, it better do something. And the same thing could be said with media. You know, if I'm paying a continuous license for something, it better provide something. That's why these online games that have monthly subscriptions do that. It's because that's constant server support. And then they fucking load that shit up with microtransactions, which boggles my fucking mind because I'm already paying for it monthly. And yet, at the same time, I'm still paying for shit in the game, which isn't included in the game, which is fucking all over the place. Digital media is the Wild West of what like YouTube was back in the day, where people can kind of just do whatever the fuck they want, and then they just test the waters to see what sticks. And again, bringing it back to what we talked about, the problem is there's enough fucking people out there that are willing to just fork out for it because they don't know any better. That becomes the market trend. If eggs are $70 a carton, and no one buys eggs, magically eggs won't be $70 a carton because no one's buying them. Everything exists only at what people are willing to pay for it. And the problem is that people keep being willing to pay for it. A car right now is like $15,000 to $20,000 more expensive than they were 10 years ago. The quality of the car has not changed. It's the same damn car. It's just more expensive now for some reason. And people are like, well, that's just how inflation works. No, it's not. Inflation is when they change the price of something and everyone agrees that it should change. If no one pays for it, guess what doesn't happen? They don't change the price. And this is where gaming's coming from. Digital, whether it was intended to be this way or not, because I know it was probably just a way to save cost on plastics manufacturing and, you know, creating boxes and having to pay people for box art and all this crazy shit. But what it's become is an easy cop-out for companies to produce garbage. I can generate so much garbage to feed you so much quicker if you can just download it directly. I don't have to worry about distribution. I pay 3 companies to list that game at $5 a pop. And the game is literally 90% AI art, generated chat GPT text, and you spent $20 on it? Multiply that by 7,000 people?
Not to mention, in the mobile game scene, you can literally pay someone on Fiverr to asset flip a game for you, and then you could put ads on it and then make money off of the ads.
Yeah, it
It's
doesn't.
it's
Just copy paste. And again, digital has made that because there's so many less hurdles to have to jump through to get that out. Physical. If I'm going to scam you with a bullshit game, I have to pay manufacturers, I have to pay publishers, I have to pay distribution, I have to pay the storefronts, I have to do. By the time I've spent any money on it, I might as well make a damn good game if I'm going to make any money. Because at that point, somebody takes that shit back to the store. That's the other fucking thing. And that had to change. And I'm glad it's finally starting to. Refunds on digital products. I buy a game, that shit's trash. Well, I can't get a refund if it's been more than 6 hours. A physical copy, I can hold that shit for a week. And as long as I have a receipt, taking that shit back.
Yeah, I remember actually you saying that. I remember I pre-ordered Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric for Wii U. And I remember the EB Games person said to me, you know, you can return this in a week if you don't like it. And I was like, I know what I'm getting myself into.
He should have said
whatever.
When you don't like it.
and so I did I bought it, I recorded footage of it, I did a video on it, and I did return it, though I kind of regret it because now that game's hard to find on Wii U. So I wish I didn't return it so I could get it. I have it in my collection still, and it's just kind of a dumb game, so I've no harm, no foul. But but having the option to return it a week later, regardless of how much time I spent playing it, is a big difference between physical and digital. If you play more than 2 hours of a Steam game, you can't refund it.
Yeah.
You can't
Which
refund.
is about how long it takes you to find out that you don't like it.
You can't refund. Microsoft Store, PlayStation Network, or eShop games, with the exception of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, because enough people complained that Nintendo had to start offering refunds because the game was not in a finished state. So it's one of those things where, like, we do have the potential to change these things, but people have to care. And that's why going to stopkillinggames.com is such an important thing. I don't care what country you live in, because there is a petition for each country, and these are official government sanctioned petitions, not change.org stuff, not any of the petitions.com, none of that shit. These are official government sanctioned petitions where if they get enough signatures, they have to be discussed in the Senate of each respective country that it gets passed through. So while we don't have much representation as gamers in legal binding, like we don't have that kind of representation, but if we get the wheels turning and make, governments realize, one of the most profitable entertainment, parts of entertainment in the world has a major problem right now, then we could start course changing these things. Better refund options for people, making sure developers know that their game has to have some kind of availability after they've stopped supporting it. Somehow finding some way to make preservation not piracy in the eyes of the industry. Because, again, 87% of games are not accessible anymore. And that number grows daily because we allow video games to not be preserved because the companies don't think it's too expensive. There needs to be a law in place to fix these things. And there isn't. And that's why they're going to keep getting away with it. That's why some things have been changed. Like China, I believe, passed a law that about gacha games, and it almost killed $1 billion industry because people were about how much spending that game companies are allowed to force on people in those games. And ironically, a lot of those games are made in China, a lot of the gacha games. So It has affected us as well. In the UK, they started calling, there's legislation pushed forward about about loot boxes and in-app purchases in games such as like NBA or FIFA and stuff like that, where they encourage you to buy these digital card packs to unlock things in the games. And so And so they're starting to put some kind of regulation on it because they're calling it gambling. Apple got hit with this hard when people kept calling in and complaining that kids had access to the adults' credit cards to continue to buy in-app purchases in games. And you know what Apple did? They started putting regulations on it that you can only do a certain amount without having to re-enter your password or re-enter certain credentials. So changes can happen, but we have to do something about it. We can't just sit and wait for the industry to do it, because we've done that for almost 50 years and they haven't done shit about it.
Well, yeah,
they don't care.
But yeah, and I think that's honestly the root of the cause. And here's the problem we run into, is that this is a problem that only affects a large group of people, but in the grand scheme of things, a very small group of people. There is not a single congressperson on the planet, unless they are a diehard gamer themselves, that gives two Fs whether or not you can still play original RuneScape.
Well, let's put this in another perspective. Streaming services like Netflix are removing stuff all the time for licensing things. So again, we need to put some kind of provision that says when you get licensed something, such as a movie to be put on Netflix, that license is forever. Or once that license deal is over, the content must remain available for those who are able to see it.
But the problem we run into that, though, is again, Netflix is not you purchasing that content, right? It's different when you are paying specific money for that specific content. When you subscribe to Netflix, when you pay for Game Pass for Xbox, you are paying for access to a predetermined library. And it's the same thing. Like, let's go back to Blockbuster, right? If Blockbuster had Dude, Where's My Car? And you go and get Dude, Where's My Car every Friday, watch it, and then take it back on Saturday. And one day you go in and Dude, Where's My Car is off the shelves because it's considered an older movie. You can't go, you guys should have a clause that says that Dude, Where's My Car should remain on your library at all times for the entire time that I'm paying for my Blockbuster membership, because you're not paying for that movie. You can buy that movie, and then that movie's yours forever. But if you're
it's
paying
not a
for
membership.
the access to the content,
you rent it every time.
Right, but Netflix itself is the membership in place of renting a specific movie, because you can still just go rent movies. If you bought Dude, Where's My Car from Netflix and then you came back on and your product is gone, yeah, that clause makes sense. But because you were paying for a changing library, their argument would be, well, you didn't buy this movie. You didn't buy this content. You bought, or you paid for the rights for us to show you something. It's like going to a movie theater.
Right. Okay. But so here's a comparison to that. Sony recently ended a license with a bunch of different film and TV services. So a ton of, if you bought stuff from Sony digitally off their storefronts, whether it be movies, TV shows, a bunch of them are gone. And even if you already purchased it and downloaded it, it is gone from your library. They just took it out of your library. Yeah. And that's a better example of at least
you purchasing it. You bought that.
Yeah.
It's like if I go and get, because we know I'm a James Bond fanatic. I bought the 4K high fidelity version off of Amazon Video of Casino Royale with Daniel Craig. There will be a day I log in to watch that movie and it will not be there. Even though now Amazon owns MGM, so there's less likely of a chance of that now. But like if I go watch DC's Superman with Henry Cavill in it, like Man of Steel, there's a day where I'm going to load that shit up and it's just not going to be there and it's not going to work because I don't own the license. And by buying it, technically just paid for a free movie ticket to walk into that same movie every time until they stop having it.
And this is the same problem, at least games haven't done yet digitally what Sony did with those movies and TV shows. You still have them in the library. You can still re-download them. If you've downloaded it, you still own it. But now,
again, like the biggest slap in the fucking face is that as we have introduced digital download purchases, right? There are libraries that will exist forever. Amazon Video, unless something terrible happens, is always going to exist because it's just an easy way for them to sell you a movie. But the Wii U doesn't exist anymore. So if I bought games digitally and they don't have expandable memory, really, I have to delete a game to play another game that's in my library. But if I can't access that game and it's gone now, What the fuck was the point of the purchase?
Well, this is the point that I'm making. You can still access it. Did you purchase it on the Wii U? Yes, it checks, and you can still download it. And yes, you can get an external hard drive for your Wii U. Put the game on the external hard drive. You can still read it. Just an example, the eShop is shut down. We were going to stream Runbow. I owned it on Wii U, but it was not on my Wii U, so I had to go to the shop and re-download it. But I was able to do that because even though I can't buy new stuff off the eShop on the Wii U, it still sees that I've bought the game before. At least Nintendo has done that. When Nintendo turned off the Wii Shop channel originally, it was just gone, and you couldn't do that. But then, within the last couple of years, they brought the shop channel back so you could re-download those things that you've already purchased. You can't purchase new stuff, but you could re-download stuff you've already purchased because it already saw that you owned it, that you paid for it. And that, though, is just the bare minimum that Nintendo has done to make sure you still have your games. That's the bare minimum. And a lot of companies do not even do that bare minimum. Sony just proved it with all the stuff they removed, that not only can you not download your things again, we're just going to take them away from your library as if you never purchased them. Even if you have the receipt, or you have like a PayPal receipt, or like something that says I purchased this thing on this date and whatever, it's mine. We don't have it anymore. You can't get it anymore. You never had it. That's the way that they're approaching it right now, and that needs to be stopped. We also need to stop this stupid fucking thing about games being temporary. Because, again, 87% of video games are no longer available. The only way you can get them is to, what the industry deems as piracy, and download them technically illegally, even though they're archived. A lot of these games are archived. You know, as bad as this guy has become, the completionist at least did one good thing, and that was buy every single Wii U and 3DS game off the eShop, give them to gaming archivists, so now they have a license for each and every single game and DLC that was on both the Wii U and 3DS eShop that has been preserved. However, that doesn't mean that you can go and download those games now. That's the biggest problem. We have preservation, but we only have preservation in the means of it's stored somewhere and you can't reach it. Just like the original Star Wars. It is in the film archives, but you can't watch it. They have it, you just can't watch it. And it's the same problem. 87% of video games are backed up, but you can't play them. And this needs to change. This has to change. If the industry is going to go through all digital eventually, we have to have some way that a game that you bought 25 years ago, you should still be able to have access to it, whether it is available to purchase or not. That it's as simple as that, and that needs to happen. And so this entire thing with StopKillingGames.com, like, that's the whole point of this, making these things available, because one day you could get out your physical copy of Fable 3 for PC and find out you can't play it anymore because the service that was required to make that game work is no longer available. And that needs to stop because it's happening with so many games. And I'm not just talking about online only games. I mean single player games that required some special thing to make them work. DRM's the worst. I said I wasn't going to shit on Capcom, but I hate that they retroactively went back and added DRM to a bunch of their games on Steam. Like, yeah, retroactively did that. Like, a game, and Atlas is the worst. They put Persona 4 Golden on Steam, a 10-year-old game, and it has DRM. Guess what, Atlas? The people who were going to steal it already stole it. You are not stopping anybody.
Which kills me that people keep adding games to Steam and then adding DRM, because, again, Father Gabe Newell there was like, piracy is a service issue and not a theft
exactly
issue. And I'm like, the man that literally stands for piracy, and you're putting it on his platform and adding DRM, and it's like, bro, he doesn't appreciate you doing this.
Like I am overly excited for Monster Hunter Wilds, but there are two things that it needs to have. One, it needs to have crossplay out of the gate. There is no reason why Monster Hunter shouldn't have crossplay when other Capcom games do. And second, if you're going to put DRM in the PC version, put crossplay in so I can buy it for a console and not play it on PC. And so I don't run into the same problem I have with Monster Hunter Rise, where because I bought the game early for Switch and it later got released on PC, I can't play with any of my friends on PC because I bought it early on a different platform. Fix that problem if you're going to include DRM. And just a heads up to Capcom, any other companies listening or anything, DRM doesn't work because guess what? It gets removed from games and then put out there illegally for people to pirate. So it's actually safer to pirate Monster Hunter Rise than to buy it on PC because it doesn't have DRM, the stupid Danuvio DRM, which fucking hurt my PC when they put it in Doom Eternal and then later removed it, but the damage was already done. Like, yeah. It's just, you are stopping no one. That's basically what I'm trying to say. You are stopping nothing. You are just literally punishing consumers for buying your game. And there needs to be a better way. And if government intervention has to be that way, then so be it.
Yeah, but the question is though, like, do you trust any government enough not to take that to some sort of extreme? Like, well, again, good news in gaming space, the whole non-compete thing just got repealed, which is really neat, which means that companies who have people that get stuck in these contracts where they're like, hey, we just had to let go of 700 developers, and now those developers aren't allowed to work for another gaming company for 5 years because of a non-compete clause. Yes. Well, now they can literally day one go work for another fucking game, which is great, because that means that these people can continue their lives when mass layoffs happen. But the other thing of that, though, is that means that the government is willing to get involved in certain things, which is both good and bad, depending on you Canadian government, me, U.S. government.
I was about to say the American mentality versus the Canadian mentality, whereas the American mentality is government intervention can never be a good thing. Where I'm like, it's just more times than not when, like, I want to believe in a world where the government is going to do out for the people, but again, more times than not, especially within the last 10 years, it has not been 100%. I mean, perfect example where the government got involved in gaming, and they didn't have to get that involved because the gaming industry listened. The ESRB. The ESRB exists because Sega and other gaming companies for PC were releasing more violent games on their systems and not properly labeling them to tell kids that they're not available. If you go into a GameStop or another game store and you want GTA 5 or GTA 5, 6, whatever the freaking current one is, if you are not of 17 years, they will not sell you the game.
Which is crazy that it's 17 because that's all over the place here.
Yeah, but so the story of the ESRB basically boils down to, and you should just watch the Gaming Historian episode on it. It goes farther in depth.
Well, yeah,
that the industry, the government said to the industry, regulate yourselves, or we will do it for you. And pushing the gaming industry to do it, they did regulate themselves, and that's why the ESRB
it's the same
exists.
thing.
That's why you can't buy a game without the ESRB logo on it, except for certain import titles. Because I do have a PS4 game that does not have an ESRB logo on the front of it. That's because it's an import title that comes from a country where ESRB is not a thing. But that's
it's the same thing though in North America with music. You know, explicit lyrics involved, explicit titles, drug content, and all that stuff. Like the musics have done that since the 80s.
And how the gaming industry got to that point where they were regulating themselves is they went to the big box stores and they said, "You guys need to stop offering games that don't have a rating on them once the rating system is implemented." And Walmart, Babbage's, all those big stores came out and said, "We will not purchase games unless they have a rating on them," because that's what wanted to happen. And then
the rating system came into place with the rating board, who have to review games, and then that whole thing.
But that is a thing where, like, the government stepped up, said, "Do this or we'll do it for you." The gaming industry did it, and they said, "Okay."
Yeah, but my fear specifically is, like, okay, let's say that they're like, hey, games have to, like, again, these are extremes. Please don't take this as me believing that this is going to happen. But there's just a lot that comes with government intervention, especially now that so much of it is ingrained in money. And it's all about, how can we make money off of this? So what if they're like, again, extreme, but if they come out and they're like, hey, there has been a rising complaint that certain titles don't exist anymore once servers are pulled offline, once access to these games are done, once systems are considered obsoleted. So what we're going to do now is that all servers that games run through are going to be government regulated, which means that all studios have to pay the government to regulate these servers, and we get to dictate when things go offline.
I don't think it's going to go that way. Why
Okay,
would it
we
go
say
that
that,
way?
but keep in mind, this is the same country, and I'm referring to us, that pushed heavily for the Net Neutrality Act, where, again, in the clauses of what that act was pushing for, specifically, and I might be claiming it wrong, but it's the one where they were like, no, the government should have more active control in how the FCC controls the internet. And specifically, instead of it being a conglomerative effort of space where you can just go on the internet, you pay for internet access, and then the internet is free for everyone at that point, right? You pay to get on it, but once you're on it, it's free. This was the same group of people that were like, what if we allowed companies to charge you how you use the internet? So if you wanted to watch videos, you had to buy a video watching package. But then if you wanted to look at the news, you had to buy a news package that's different than video package. Like, this is a real thing that existed in the US that they pushed for because the government would get a kickback of every sale of one of those packages. If you wanted to play a game on your computer, you would have to get special licensing for that computer to play games. This is what they wanted for the internet because it boiled down to, where's the money that I'm going to get out of it? Because that's all filibustering is in this area. It's just, how can the government be changed by who you can grease the palm of to get done what you want done? And that's all it is. And that's what worries me every time. That's what worries a lot of people. Every time something comes up to, well, let's let the government decide how this should be handled. 90% of the time, you would believe it would be pretty cut and dry, just legal system. Like, Supreme Court makes a decision, it's done. But like, that's not how it works. It's a bunch of people arguing, and then, like, money, and it's always money. And then somehow they'll give themselves a raise again in the middle of that. I don't know how, but it happens every time.
Well, the half glass empty perspective of U.S. citizens on the government aside, I'm not talking about them regulating it. What I'm talking about is there being protections in place for consumers. This is a consumer law problem.
Right. So was that a government issue, or is that I don't find it government, but like a commission of government, like, if that makes sense. Like,
I don't know
what the hell decision. But
I am not qualified to say what's so or not. All I know is that we need to get the discussion out there, because if we let this stay the way it is, that number of 87% is going to keep going up, and then eventually a game that people cherish, and it's already happened, it's just going to be gone. There'll be no way to access it. You can't do anything. I'm sorry. If World of Warcraft shuts its servers off tomorrow, you can't play World of Warcraft.
Right.
Final Fantasy 14 shuts its servers off tomorrow, you can't play that. If when the Switch finally does shut off its online service and shuts its eShop, if Nintendo's nice enough, they'll leave it up so that you can re-download stuff you've already purchased, but you can't purchase anything off the shop anymore. Which, here's the thing that I don't understand. It's insane to me that they take away your ability to purchase stuff, because that's money. What does it cost to keep up those servers compared to the amount of money you could make off of these services? People were still buying stuff on the 3DS eShop up until it closed. Like, before they knew it was closing, people were just buying stuff regularly. They were still making enough money off of it. So what was it that justified them shutting down the store? You know what I mean? Like, this is information that we don't have. And I don't think we're ever going to get, because Nintendo's not about to share their industry secrets with everybody, but it's something that just baffles me, that we don't have a better thing at doing it. And instead of, giving people the opportunity to preserve things like they do in many other things, there's, when I don't think there's any video game that's public domain yet, but what's going to happen when a video game becomes public domain?
Well, see, that's the thing. It's like copyright law changed because of Disney, literally because of Disney. Mm-hmm. And they exchanged it to, I think, either 100 or 99 years. It's something weirdly specific.
Well, I mean, Mickey Mouse is now in the public domain, so...
Well, specifically Steamboat Willie's Mickey Mouse, not Mickey Mouse the character.
But still.
Yeah. So
It's
the
public
imaging
domain.
of the black and white Steamboat Willie Mickey Mouse can be used. If you use any other Mickey, you can still be sued into the absolute ground. The crazy part about it, though, is that the way that things have changed with public domain, right, is at what point are people using it commercially? Like your own character, have you put a copyright on you, on Zero?
There's a clause in the programs that are used for it that I don't personally have it. Like, I can't afford to personally copyright my character, but there's a clause saying that there's a use for the person who owns it and the artists who work on it and stuff like
Right.
that.
But like if I create a video game and just steal that and put it right in there, can you come after me? Like,
No, but I think that'd be kind of cool anyways.
Right. Well, right. At that point. But like, let's say someone else pops off on Twitch using your exact model. So now there's two of you.
I question how they got it, but
right. But if they have it and they copyright it, do you own it?
Yeah, that's the tough part.
So that's the thing. Like, genuinely, and I don't mean this as a joke, I genuinely thought about copyrighting my name. Because
I can't afford it. It's like $500 plus dollars.
Yeah, it's not cheap. Here's the other crazy part. If you Google Mr. Up Here, you'll find me. If you take off the Mr. part, there is already a company called Up Here.
Yeah.
And it's a generic ass Amazon tech company. But it's stuff like that, like copyright and how it works, because like at some point there's differencing between trademarking, copywriting, registering. I mean, like it's all over the place. Like North America's fucking artist protection laws are like a billion different ways to skin the same apple at this point. So it's a hard one. That's what I'm saying. It's like all of this boils down to who owns what, how much money do they get, and then who gets to dictate who is what. Because here's the scary part about all of this. At the end of the day, again, it's about money. So if someone with more money than you comes up to you and says, I own this now, you can't use it, regardless of if you bought it, there's nothing you could do. Because if you buy, again, if I go to Amazon and I buy a movie, I have an agreement with Amazon that I have that movie as long as they have that movie in stock, right? But what if fucking, Universal Studios buys Amazon? Do I still get to keep the same rights? Or can they go, you bought that from Amazon, not from us, I'm removing your rights to the movie?
And that's the point. They shouldn't be allowed to do that.
They shouldn't
Sony
be.
Did the same thing.
But it's all about money. And again, that's the part that bugged me. The slap in the face was the thing about Ubisoft we talked about earlier, where they actively went into an active game and removed content because of licensing. What the fuck? Like, yeah, I didn't pay for that DLC, but like, who does that? Like, who goes into a game to remove content? Like, imagine whichever that fucking Final Fantasy it was that had like all the product placement in it, like Coleman, like tints, and fucking Versace made Luna Freya's wedding dress, and like all of this like trademarked and copywritten items. What's going to happen when those titles run out? Am I just never going to be able to buy that game again because it's just so ingrained?
Yeah.
Or Alan Wake. When Alan Wake came out, all of the batteries in Alan Wake on the original console edition of the game were Energizer. All of them. Big advertisement, Energizer. Patch came out for the game, all the batteries became generic and they no longer say Energizer. And it's because Energizer was like, hey, your character drains batteries like a motherfucker. It's making us look like our batteries are shit. So they removed the partnership from the game. They actively went into people's games and changed them.
Yeah. Pikmin with the product placement. Yeah. With, you can't, Duracell batteries are now just generic batteries. And I understand that. That's a lesser of two evils, in my opinion. The problem is that going back to Fortnite, they must have some clause that tells them they can't do this. Like, how does, like they were trying to get Samus in Fortnite.
Oh yeah,
Nintendo
I saw that
didn't
one.
want to because Nintendo's like, we feel weird about Samus being on non-Nintendo platforms. And it's like, grow the fuck up, Nintendo.
Yeah, because they wanted it to be a Switch exclusive, but they're like, but
Yeah.
it'll still technically appear in other people's games.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, then we don't want it on there. We only want it to show up on our version. And it's like, that isn't okay.
Yeah.
Sure. No, not really.
But Fortnite must have some kind of clause. Because like, what is stopping Toei from being like, you need to take Goku out of, you know,
Well,
out
a
of
lot of
Fortnite?
it, and I know that this is a weird thing, but this is true. A lot of it has to do with who creates the assets, right? If you pay a company to provide you assets for something, like, okay, genuinely, for example's sake, Zero, let's say you've made a game, right? You
Okay.
are making your own RPG, fully 3D, beautiful graphics and all that. But you want to be like, you want to pay homage to the titans of the game, okay? Or of that genre. So you reach out to Square Enix and you're like, I would love to have Cloud. I'd love to have Zidane. I'd love to have Cecil. I'd love to have all these characters as regular ass NPCs that you can just kind of talk to as like a funny Easter egg. Okay, so you get the permission to use the characters and their likenesses. Licensing on that is infinitely easier than if you go, okay, can you provide for me models to use? So then you're paying for the service of that character. That is where things start getting crazy. Because if you pay for the likeness of something like a photo, they can't retcon your photo. You know, like if you have like a poster that came out that was like Cloud and your main character from your game, they can't retroactively be like, hey, licensing is up. You can't show that photo anymore. The photo is already out there. It exists.
Mm-hmm.
But if they provide you something like, you know, a physical doorway to walk through, they can take the doorway back when the licensing is out, which means that you would lose the character from that completely. So I think Fortnite has it right because they make their own assets. So they're just paying for the perpetual license to use that asset, but they are making the asset themselves. And I think that's a lot of it. That's why they did buff Peter Griffin. I don't know if you saw that article, but the reason that Peter from Family Guy is not his normal weight and stuff is because they had to make the asset themselves. And they're like, yeah, it was impossible for us to get his proportions right. Like we just couldn't get it to do what we needed it to do.
So okay, but there has to be something else because there's plenty of games that do that that will make the assets themselves, and then when the license deal over, oh, it's not available anymore. You have to take it out of your game.
Well, you
I,
also have to remember how much money Fortnite makes. So they could probably just get crazy amounts of shit.
yeah, that's fair. It makes me sad because I mean, there's no Unreal Tournament, but it is what it is. I think we've pretty much said our piece on this topic. I think to end off is I think our best bet right now is to take this seriously. Go to stopkillinggames.com, see if your country qualifies and sign the petition. Best case scenario, it gets discussed as a consumer problem. Because that's as far as I think it's ever going to go in government. I know that you gave the doom and gloom, response, but I do not think it's ever going to get there. They just do not care enough about it. But at least we can get them to think about it and see that consumers are being affected by these practices. And
Yeah, and I don't know if that's an FCC problem for us or so, I don't know. Because again, in every country it's going to be different, and
yeah,
and a lot of it's going to come down to because no company like there's probably a gaming company out there that cares, but when they get this petition in front of them, and if it goes before government, they're going to call a giant court, and a bunch of gaming representatives are going to show up, and then they're going to have to argue against keeping these games active. So a representative from Nintendo, Sony,
again,
Xbox, and they might all have different opinions, but someone's going to have to
it's
come forward
not
and say that.
necessarily keeping the game active. It's allowing the game to continue without support from the company.
Oh yeah,
That is the main
and
thing.
again, that's just going to be you're going to have the world's best lawyers coming up with every idea of why they shouldn't do that. And the question is going to be, can we convince as a group of consumers, a group of other people who have little to no care about this kind of subject, to take our side over the group of people that are the owners of this product?
And my point is, like, as bad as you think it could get, we have to at least try because it's worse now.
Yeah, because it's not going to get better. I want everyone, and I think this is it being a bit pragmatic, but I mean this. I want everyone to realize that if they say no, do what you're doing anyway. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what they tell you. We're going to do what we want anyway. It
And
would
don't
just be nice
forget-
if they supported us.
And don't forget, if you can't get those games by wink wink ways anymore, there will always be a Chinese company selling an Android box with hundreds of thousands of games already loaded on it.
Yeah, if only it wasn't 1992. I mean, sorry, it's 2024. I would like my games to not be buggy messes. Somehow they made a DOS game worse.
But hey, a lot of times these systems have SD cards, and you don't even have to use the system. You can just,
Pop
Well,
them
you-
into something.
I don't need
crazy
to
how they
tell
do it.
you.
Thank
but
you,
you
random
know.
countries that don't have trade protection laws where companies don't have to be given a shit. If the Chinese knockoff didn't exist, half the people on this planet wouldn't have half the nice shit they have.
So long and short, go over to stopkillinggames.com. Take a few minutes, just see if your country's listed and if the petition's available. Some of them, it's the government sites are poorly organized, like the Canadian petition one, where I have to search through pages and pages and pages to find it. But it was there, and I signed it. And you can too. So again, I'll type it out in the chat so people can go to it. It is Stop Killing if I could type killinggames.com. Can't pin it. Oh, I so this. Go here. There. Now it'll let me pin it, probably. No, it's not letting me pin it. Thank you, Twitch, for not allowing your freaking thing to work. Oh, now I can pin it. Okay, cool. Sweet. Awesome. Cool. Sweet. All right. That is our topic for tonight. Before we finish up, let's talk about stuff that we got going on. Mr. Up here, sir, what's going on? What you got coming up? I see that you started streaming again.
Yeah, so I have, and I've kerfuckled that already. So I apologize to anyone that cares. I had started playing Metro Exodus because I'd never beaten that game, and it's like kind of open world, kind of linear, but it was fun. Especially the first couple of nights I played it, there was a big turnout, and then I kind of stopped. If that makes sense, like I got caught up playing Dragon's Dogma one night, and I was like, I'll just stream this. And then last stream, I got a group of people together. We played Fortnite like a bunch of children. So I apologize. But yes, Monday nights between 9 and 11 Eastern time are my nights that I stream. I only stream once a week to try to keep things pretty low key, but I do try to play consistently. The only time I will not be playing is when I'm out of country this upcoming month.
Okay. Anything else from your camp that you want to tell the people about?
I mean, that you can view on the internet. No, I'm pretty lame like that. That's pretty much all I've got going on, other than, wonderfully hanging out with you on certain Sundays. I will state, hopefully there will be some music coming out from a little group I'm a part of now. I was telling Zero about that earlier. If music goes up to kind of promo us, because we can't make money off of it, I'll post it and you'll be able to see it. But it'll be interesting. We'll see how this all goes.
From my camp, I just want to make an announcement that I haven't made yet publicly, but I am taking a break from Zero Plays, specifically Zero Plays, at least for the next month, because I need to prepare for things, because Anime North is at the end of the month, in May. So I'm going to be going to that for the whole weekend. I have a panel. I don't know when it's going to be, but I have a panel called So You Want to Be a VTuber, which is my tutorial on how to become a VTuber or content creator in general. So Anime North is at the end of the month. I'm just finding out when it actually is because I don't remember. I'm checking my calendar. It is May 24th to the 26th in Etobicoke, Toronto. So, or Etobicoke, Ontario, whatever. This part of Toronto, part of the Greater Toronto area, whatever. I'll be there for the weekend, and I'll be posting updates on my socials as time goes on to let people know where they can find me, where they can hang out. I'm trying to get some what do you call it? Some hangout sessions going on, which may or may not involve charging crystals. The word's out on that one yet. but
That
that's
means
how.
a totally different thing down here.
That's basically the main thing that I'm focusing on. I am focusing on my content for the panel, but I'll be around, and yeah, should be fun. Should be fun. And I also have just released. It's on Patreon. It'll be available tomorrow for everybody. My video review of Godzilla v Kong, or Godzilla X Kong, The New Empire, starring Mittens, my friend Mittens, who I saw it with. So that'll be going up.
I don't know
and
why I
then,
immediately thought of a cat.
he
Starring Mittens, my cat.
he is a cat boy.
Oh, well, there you go. I've
Two
cracked
cat
the code.
boys watch Godzilla. That's basically what it comes down to. But yeah, that's what I have in my camp. Anime North, basically the big thing. And yeah, see you all there. Cool. So if there's not anything further you want to say, I would say let's call this podcast, and I'll find someone to raid after this.
Yeah,
anything
thanks.
else? Anything else you want to say?
Appreciate you again having me on. Looking forward to this every. As things come on, if anybody has any questions, don't forget to reach out to us on Twitter or X now, I guess, or Instagram or YouTube comments when this comes out and stuff. We do check that. I mean, like I religiously look at these episodes. So that's just me, but that's my own narcissism.
I have to look at it all the time because I have to put them in as end slates and cards on other YouTube videos. So I always have a tab open on them. So
it's pretty like, again, just like, everyone be safe, everyone have a good time, everyone keep us posted. Like, we do like to hear from you. We like to know what's going on in everybody's worlds, because, like, the internet is the last bastion of human interaction, and we really do like having you guys around in the general term. So, like, thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate that.
And also, if you'd like to get this episode early, and eventually I'm trying to find a way to make downloads happen, Patreon is where you can find early access to stuff. I'm going to be posting more behind the scenes stuff, as well as a exclusive podcast, which is the Hunter Base Undernet, which you can get exclusive topics over there. So that is at my Patreon, which if I can type, it will hopefully be there. Sweet. Yeah, so you can follow that there, and for as little as $1 Canadian a month, which is less than $1 American, you can get early access and behind the scenes and all that fun stuff, and the extra podcast, which we may or may not do tonight. I'm feeling pretty tired. We have to do that another time.
We can always pick that one up.
We can pick that one up another time. All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming out. If you're watching on YouTube, please leave a comment to let us know, or just hit us up at the social medias, like Mr. Up here said. We got them. You can find us. Thanks again for listening in, and we'll see you on the next one. Doot doodaloot do.
Bump.
Thank you for picking up what I was putting down. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Didn't know that was going. All right.
See you next time.
Boy.